It's a bad deal.
It really does not achieve the objective.
If there's trouble in the region, you find Iran.
He shocked the political world today.
I preached that you want to get in, serve, and get out, and that's what I'm doing.
Tensions escalating overseas as Russian bombers buzz the U.S. for a second day in a row.
This used to be commonplace during the Cold War.
The United States of America will always seek peace, but under President Trump, the shield stands guard and the sword stands ready.
UC Berkeley has forcibly canceled her lecture.
No, I'm definitely giving the speech. What are they going to do, arrest me?
This bill will extend and improve the Veterans Choice Program so that more veterans can see the doctor of their choice.
We'll see what pans out in the negotiation, but I think there's an opportunity. Can I just need some help? I think I got this, but thank you. Maybe. That was cool. How do you follow that?
Sean Spice said, you know what, I'm going to take a break and just let Gronk take some questions and then rip his sleeves off.
If Gronk was behind the podium there, you've got to wonder whether or not they would go ahead and continue to ask those questions, or they just look.
Yeah. So Patriots went to the White House because obviously they won the Super Bowl, and Sean Spice was in the middle of this press conference, and Gronk was around the corner and says, "Do you need some help?"
Right. For a guy that didn't even play in the Super Bowl, he's starting to get a lot of publicity. He's the star of the parade.
I know.
He's gotten a bunch of national ads.
I did not even know who he was until he was at the parade with his shirt off, spraying the crowd with alcohol.
That'll do
Then he tackled Tom Brady on the football field when Tom got his jersey
back. On the baseball
back.
field, yeah.
On the baseball field. He grabbed his jersey from him, and now he's doing this. This guy is awesome.
Right.
I want to have a beer with him. He's so funny.
Well, put it this way, if you run into him, you'll have a chance to have a sip of his beer, because he never does not have
He
one.
might spray it all over me.
Absolutely. All right, so that was a lot of fun yesterday. Meanwhile, there was also a lot of action yesterday, especially and today, especially when we talk about immigration. Guess what? The Homeland Security Secretary and the Attorney General are heading to the border today.
Right. It's going to be their first joint session, essentially, down there. I say joint session because Attorney General Jeff Sessions will be there, along with Department of Homeland Security General Kelly. What's interesting about it is, obviously, the overriding theme is how are we going to secure the border and at the same time turn people around who are in this country illegally.
Yeah, and they're saying, you know, it's not just about the drug cartels and illegal drugs coming over the border. It's also about keeping the terrorists out of our country, because they'll find the weaknesses on the border and they'll come through.
I was saying this morning when I walked in, is that it's so different having a general with a law enforcement mindset in that position of Homeland Security Secretary as opposed to lawyers who are going at this legalistically. To have a Marine general say, I stay up at night because I worry about who's coming through our southern border because I know about the evil intentions, but yet the media seems to be fixated on people here illegally that are being deported, those who are brought here as kids, the so-called DACA people, they were brought here as kids, the Dreamers, under the DACA Act, which the president says, I don't really know what to do with that. I'm pretty much going to leave them alone. Well, they're focused on this one guy in particular, and they're saying, well, you threw out one Dreamer. Well, upon further review, this Dreamer had some issues.
Yeah, he was convicted of theft, according to Customs, and had never renewed his DACA license, what would you call it? License.
His name, Juan Manuel Montes. Initially, the Department of Homeland Security said that his DACA status had expired. I think that's the word they used. But then they realized he had another year on the clock for himself. However, on February 19th, the Border Patrol detained him because he was trying to scale the wall back into the United States. And then they said, you know what? He had left the United States voluntarily to go back to Mexico. And when you do that, if you leave the country, the DACA enrollees must be approved for travel outside the United States. So that invalidated it. So yesterday, when Jeff Sessions was on Happening Now, the case came up about this, hey, what about this one guy, a Dreamer, has special status, right? And then Jeff Sessions said this about people who are in the country illegally.
DACA enrollees are not being targeted. I don't know why this individual was picked up. Everybody in the country illegally is subject to being deported. So people come here and they stay here a few years and somehow they think that they're not subject to being deported. Well, they are.
His attorneys went on to say the reason he tried to re-enter the country is because he was deported 2 days before he was caught scaling the wall.
But why would the fixation on this one individual? It's totally glosses over the main subject, in that this president and many people in America who voted for the president are concerned about our security and our immigration, our rules on immigration. So if one guy or one woman somehow gets scooped up, they're like, let's go fix it, that's no problem. But don't act like the whole system's on its head. And as President Trump has brought up in the past, he's gotten a lot of conservatives angry because he is not tossing a lot of the dreamers out. He says, listen, I'm really torn on this. He didn't have anything to do with coming here. A lot of them have not broken any laws besides getting here from their parents and nothing to do with them. So instead of focusing on what he did to tick off conservatives, they say, what about this one guy, or what about the next case? But meanwhile, the other thing in the eye of the storm is what's happened with the Iranian deal. As the president said before, that's one of the first things he's going to look at is this Iranian deal. He never said he was going to tear it up, especially when everything to do with this Iranian deal has them getting everything right away. They're alleviated from the sanctions. All the funds they get that were frozen in our country were given to them. And then all of a sudden, when all the good things are given to them, now all of a sudden there's a sense that, well, if the President Trump is really going to stay by his word, he's going to tear up this deal. That doesn't make much sense, and the Secretary of State emphasized that yesterday.
Well, Rex Tillerson, he did talk about that yesterday. He was basically saying the goal here is to have a non-nuclear Iran. That's not happening. He's saying instead we're just delaying that. We're kicking the can. The Obama administration, he said, had kicked the can down the road, and things are about to change. Listen.
It really does not achieve the objective. It is another example of buying off a power who has nuclear ambitions. We buy them off for a short period of time, and then someone has to deal with it later. We just don't see that that's a prudent way to be dealing with Iran, certainly not in the context of all of their other disruptive activities.
So what they've done is they have ordered a 90-day review to see exactly what's going on with Iran, because while they've got 90 days on this review, just in a couple of weeks, the president has to decide whether or not he is going to go ahead and extend the sanctions, because the sanctions were suspended and not revoked and can be reimposed by presidential pen. What makes the whole thing complicated is while Rex Tillerson is saying, you know, here's what we think is going on with Iran, the State Department came out the day before on Tuesday night and said that Iran was complying to the letter of the law. That just makes it more complicated, but, you know, given the fact that the President of the United States said it was the worst deal ever, and Mike Pence said, you know, if we're in charge, we're going to rip it up, that frames the subject.
Well, you know, actually, what Rex Tillerson said the day before is nothing wrong with it. If the problem is the deal itself, well, and there's another issue of whether they're getting this heavy water to make a nuclear weapon. But the bottom line is, even if they go by the letter of the law, it's bad for America. And guess who understands that? Senator Schumer, because he was one of the people who voted against it. But he didn't rally any other Democrats to fight against it. He let the president get it. And by the way, as Secretary of Defense Mattis said, everywhere you look in the region, they have their hands doing something negative, whether it's a Lebanese situation, whether it's contributing to a Hezbollah, what they're doing in Syria. They never address the problem with their proliferation and support of terror throughout the area.
Every problem always leads back to Iran. He was saying, you know what bothered me about that deal, though? Do you remember when all the details were released? Inspectors are not allowed to go in there. We're not allowed to send our inspectors in to make sure they're not making nuclear weapons. We have to give them, it was like 90 days. We have to give them notice before we go in. Just enough time for them to clean out
and
the
we don't
news.
personally view it. Was given to they decide to give us samples of their declared nuclear operations, not even the ones that weren't declared. That was found by a operation against their government.
Just like Assad saying, we've gotten rid of the chemical weapons.
Didn't work.
Yeah.
Not really a very good deal. Meanwhile, Ann Coulter is supposed to speak April 22nd at Berkeley, right? Well, not so fast. She was invited to the University of California at Berkeley by two different groups, I think Young America Foundation and the college Republicans out there. But yesterday she was informed, you know what, we're going to have to cancel your speech because we cannot guarantee your safety, which is curious because, keep in mind, Berkeley, going back to 1964, a promoter of free speech. So what's she going to do? Here she is.
I am giving the speech. I don't know. What are they going to do? Arrest me? They can put me in the Birmingham jail. But no, I'm definitely giving the speech. I was invited to give a speech, and they went through what college students have come to recognize. They kept piling on, you know, requirements, ruses. You can't speak in the evening. You have to speak in the daytime when kids are in classes. We're not sure which room you're going to use. We won't tell you to the last minute. You have to exclude everyone except students. And although the groups the intermediaries kept encouraging me to say, you know, this is unfair. They never do this to liberals. I kept saying, nope, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I agreed to all of their demands, and then wake up this morning and they send out a letter saying how much they love the First Amendment and freedom of speech, and they're so committed to it. But we're just canceling her anyway.
If she gives a speech, she's